Well, everyone's been distracted with the recent election of Donald Trump and what that could mean for Bitcoin in the United States. One of the world's most prestigious banks quietly just acquired $710 million worth of Bitcoin exposure. In the same news, the ETFs combined have accumulated over 1 million Bitcoin, which is absolutely freaking crazy. What bank is it that I'm talking about? I'm talking about Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs is one of the most well-respected wealth management banks on the planet. It's rumored that you need at least a $10 million account just to bank with them, essentially. And they've been one of Bitcoin's biggest critics over the last, 5-10 years or so. They haven't been recommending it. But again, the thing that we always say on Simply Bitcoin, eventually everyone bows down to the king. And again, don't pay attention to what they say, pay attention to what they do. Also, this is a trend that you're seeing worldwide. MicroStrategy buys 51,780 BTC. Mara announces, the publicly traded Bitcoin miner, $700 million convertible notes to acquire more BTC. Saylor Scientific raises $21 million to acquire 215 BTC. And the Japanese company that Dylan LeClaire and Bitcoin Magazine are advising is again offering more debt to acquire Bitcoin. So you're seeing this trend happening everywhere. The so-called Saylor's infinite money glitch. It's very, very exciting. Also happy to be back home. It was a pretty crazy week last week. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. We did shows in front of a volcano in San Salvador. And of course, we were at the Adopting Bitcoin conference trying to live stream for you guys from the jungle. That was pretty fun. Anyways, I'm going to bring up my legendary co-host, Optimus Fields, and of course, our very special guest today, Mauricio from Ledn. Man, how you guys doing?
Doing great this morning. We're on a tear, and Bitcoin just keeps popping up with bullish mornings. So enjoying it.
Absolutely, man. Bitcoin is pumping up. I think everyone's having a good time. Making all-time highs. I was kind of worried, Mauricio, because we were like kind of chop-solidating for 8 months. And, I saw people are like, is Bitcoin getting boring? Is it done? Is the volatility over? Is this thing so big? And then all of a sudden, wakata, it goes from like 55 to 93 overnight, very, very quickly. I felt something. I didn't feel a lot, but I felt something.
I agree with you. I was a little bit, to me, it wasn't clear what was going to happen going into the elections, because I think Bitcoin had a decent run leading up to the election, and there was clearly two very different outcomes that could come out of it. We obviously got the Trump victory, and you saw Bitcoin just absolutely catapult after the news. And I think it's a testament to how much Bitcoin has been, in so many ways, held back by, whether it's Operation Choke Point or an unfriendly SEC, et cetera. And I think just the idea of those things shifting just reignited the market with optimism. And none of these things are a done deal, but the sort of chances of them materializing are much higher. And I think the market is showing you that they're excited. And we'll get into all these other purchases that you just discussed, but it's basically, you got to get on the Bitcoin train now. If you're not on the Bitcoin train, you're going to get left behind.
100%. And something that we're going to focus on later on this week too is Howard Lupnick. I believe he's managing a lot of the assets for Tether, but also he recently went on Pomp's podcast, and Pomp was like, so you buying Bitcoin? He's like, I'm buying tens of millions of dollars of Bitcoin. We're going to be buying hundreds of millions of dollars of Bitcoin. According to Polymarket, he has the highest odds right now to be named Treasury Secretary. And what you were saying, Mauricio, that is in stark contrast to how Bitcoin has been treated on the regulatory level for the last 3.5 years. You go in there with someone who holds hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. I mean, trust people's incentives, man. Like, he's probably not going to create a hostile regulatory environment, right?
Well, that for one, but even so many people around the administration, like, people tend to forget that Donald Trump himself launched a token or supported a token. And if you look at the launch, the sale didn't hit its targets. And likely it's because he had to do all these dances that every other token has to do, which is only available to foreign investors, only available to accredited US, etc. So he's been through the pain that many in the industry have. And again, some of the stuff is Bitcoin specific, some of the stuff is more crypto related, but throughout the spectrum, there's just a complete shift in what was once an anti-crypto army to now what it seems a pro-crypto army. So it's not even like you remove the headwind, you've now replaced the headwind with a tailwind. So the effect of that is going to be supersonic, like as many people are anticipating.
100%. And there's also been news of Cynthia Lummis really moving full steam ahead with the so-called U.S. Strategic Reserve. Right now, the Polymarket odds gives it at like about a 33%, which is nuts. And if that happens, I'm telling you guys, and I think I saw Adam Back tweet this out earlier this morning, we're going to see $7 million Bitcoin in the next couple of years. If the United States, if the U.S. government, I'm not like, this isn't like, bull juice or anything. I'm telling you, look, if the United States, Michael Saylor bought like $4.6 billion worth of Bitcoin or something before he was using the infinite money glitch. The United States has a money printer, right? This is a totally different conversation. And then that's going to force other nation states to stay competitive with the United States to use their money printers to buy Bitcoin too, right? So we can see something like the likes of which we've never seen before. Anyways, Opti, good morning. How are you doing? Have you had your coffee? We had Sunday flights from Freedom Country from San Salvador yesterday. Are you alive? How you doing?
Yeah, I did have my coffee this morning. I think I'm finally getting over that whole sinus thing I caught in El Salvador because of the fog. So I still sound a little weird, but the show goes on. Yeah, man, it feels good to be home. It was also a fun trip. We got stable internet. I don't know if you guys saw me laughing at the beginning, but Nika said keyword tried to stream on the jungle internet. It feels good having some good internet. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say today. But yeah, man, I feel good. It feels good to be back home in the studio, keep the show running, man. Can never complain over here. This is our job. Love it. Love it.
Yeah. I mean, but to give us credit, right? So we were able to stream after an hour and a half of the first day, we fixed the internet and we were able to stream the rest of the conference. And then the second day, we started it off perfectly. And then 10 minutes into Dr. Jack Cruz's talk, interestingly, the internet just disappeared.
Rumor mills are flying. Right? They just didn't want Dr. Jack Cruz's message to get out to the world is what everyone's saying.
So, it was interesting. But luckily we did record it locally. So we will be uploading that later on this week. So stay tuned to that. Anyways, let's jump straight into today's news. So let's talk about the Goldman Sachs news. This is huge for a couple of reasons. Actually, one of my best friends in high school, I'm not going to name or say who he is, but one of my best friends in high school actually works at Goldman. And, I have 7 high school friends, those people that you grew up with. You guys all, know what I'm talking about, right? If those people that you grew up in high school, you know them. And, if there's something about like that age, those teenage years, or you make memories with people that it's different, right? And you kind of like always kind of have that friendship with them. And out of those 7 people, I orange pill 6 out of those 7. And one of those that I wasn't able to orange pill was this friend who works at Goldman. He's very successful there, climbed the ladder. And he was never into Bitcoin. He was just like, no, the thing that he would say is like, it doesn't produce any revenue. Like it doesn't make it. It's not backed by anything. Like whatever, those things that you always hear. Well, I mean, like I think things changed as soon as how we call him here at Simply Bitcoin, Daddy Fink, aka Larry Fink from BlackRock, basically legitimized Bitcoin in the eyes of TradFi with the approval of the ETF in January. And that kind of just, changed everything, right? You have pension funds, getting into Bitcoin. You have Wells Fargo. You have the second largest bank in France, right? This is like, they're all getting exposure to Bitcoin. Like forget about everything that's been said over the last 5-6 years about it being, an index of money laundering and all that stuff. It seems like all those things have been forgotten, and number go up does what number go up does best, and you can't ignore it anymore, right? So I think this is a big deal just because this is one of, the most prestigious banks in the United States. and also a bank that you could say, you know, they wouldn't be, it's conservative. They wouldn't be doing this unless they felt very, very confident about Bitcoin's, you know, future potential. So anyways, let's get to the article. Goldman Sachs holds $710 million in Bitcoin ETFs. Since the second quarter, Goldman Sachs has added $300 million to its portfolio in Bitcoin ETF holdings, increasing its exposure, Mauricio, I know you're a percentage guy, by 71%. I mean, that's a huge, huge increase. Goldman Sachs, a major global investment bank, once critical of Bitcoin, has disclosed significant holdings in Bitcoin ETFs. In November 14th, filing with the SEC, reported about $718 million in holdings in 8 Bitcoin ETFs. The report disclosed a $461 million investment in BlackRock's ETF. The bank's latest quarterly holdings revealed it added $300 million to its Bitcoin ETF portfolio since the second quarter, a 71% increase. Goldman Sachs entered the spot Bitcoin ETF market in Q2. It goes on, apart from a $461 million investment in BlackRock, Goldman Sachs also now holds $96 million in Fidelity's Wise Origin Bitcoin ETF fund, $72 million in Grayscale's Bitcoin Trust ETF, and around $60 million in Invesco Galaxy Bitcoin ETF. Additionally, Goldman Sachs holds $22.5 million worth of Bitwise Bitcoin ETF, $3 million in the ARK ETF, and about $4 million in the Grayscale Bitcoin Mini Trust ETF. Okay, long TLDR, they just have a crap ton of Bitcoin exposure amongst all these ETFs, right? And I think that should tell you everything you need to know. And again, the giant increase, I mean, 71% exposure tells you everything you need to know. But I just kind of want to read some of the things that they've said in the past. In 2020, Goldman Sachs slams Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, arguing that they are, quote, not an asset class and not a suitable investment for its clients. Even after Goldman Sachs launched its limited BTC derivatives trading desk in May 2021, some of its executives, such as private wealth management chief investment officer Sharim Mosavar Rahmani, I hope I pronounced that correctly, remained skeptical of crypto. In April, Wall Street Journal interviewed the private wealth management chief investment officer, and she said that Goldman Sachs clients had not expressed much interest in exposure to crypto despite a major bull market this year. Quote, we do not think it is an investment asset class. Comparing the recent crypto enthusiasm to the tulip mania of the 1600s, quote, we're not believers in crypto, she added. Meanwhile, another division of the bank increased their exposure by 700%. Here's Willy Woo. He provided a little bit more context here from the original kind of breaking news tweet by Bitcoin Archive. He says, full context, this is via 13F filings, which is what institutions file to the SEC to disclose what they are holding for their clients. Effectively, Bitcoin is in demand everywhere, and Goldman has no choice but to execute or lose their wealth management customers. In your face, lady. I don't know what else to say. Anyways, in other news, Sam Callahan is saying, this morning, MicroStrategy buys another 51,780 BTC. Mara announces $700 million converted to acquire more BTC. Selmer Scientific raises $21 million and acquires 215 BTC. Metaplanet issues 1.75 billion yuan debt offering to buy more BTC. The corporate Bitcoin race is just heating up. So, I mean, crazy news all over the place. This is bonkers. This is insane. You can't ignore Bitcoin's incentives. You have to bow down to the king. I find that quite interesting. You compare and contrast what the chief investment officer for the wealth management division is saying, quoted saying, and then you pay attention to the numbers and they tell a completely different story, as Willy Woo so correctly pointed out. So Mauricio, you're a numbers guy. What does all this mean? What is the significance of this? Is this just noise? What's your take?
No, it's absolutely not just noise. I think this, what this means to me is that when you're seeing groups like Goldman or Goldman's clients, which are very, very wealthy individuals that are going out and demanding Bitcoin be put in their portfolios, I think you always had this If you go back to, I think it was Hal Finney that once said, it's good, probably a good idea to pick up some Bitcoin in case it takes off, right? So for the last few years, we've been in this, Bitcoin could be zero, or it could be a legitimate store of value, and in which case no one knows what the number could be, right? So to put things in perspective, gold, which is what most people know of as a store of value, the market cap of gold is about $17.5 trillion. Bitcoin, even after this run up, is at $1.75 trillion. So still a perfect 1/10, call it, of what the traditional reserve asset is, which is, by the way, completely analog. What you're seeing here is you're saying, okay, well, Bitcoin is certainly not going to be zero. So the number is going to be some multiple of gold, whether a fraction or multiple times gold. And if you look at the delta between gold and Bitcoin, everyone's kind of looking at each other and saying, this thing is going to become much closer to gold, because why would anyone hold gold? This generation is not going to want it. They're going to want this new thing. And everybody's basically racing to say, well, we want to participate in the repricing of this asset, since we know it's now not going away. Now, what's going to be super interesting, to me, it's not surprising that wealthy investors and smart investors are getting into Bitcoin. The guys like Stan Druckenmiller, Dan Tapiero, and a bunch of others, they're famously in Bitcoin for a very long time, wildly successful investors. What I think is very interesting is these companies are now racing because corporate treasuries want to take advantage of this repricing event that is going to happen. What I think is going to be super interesting is that eventually these things are going to stop making news. As in, today it's great. 5 companies are announcing that they're basically going to go buy Bitcoin. But in a few months or in a few years, it's going to be expected that companies come out and buy Bitcoin. And so I think companies are trying to right now differentiate themselves by adding Bitcoin to the balance sheet, because it's still a differentiator. But in due time, it will stop being a differentiator. So people are trying wildly to basically, get their names surfaced to the top of the news cycle by being the first ones to do this. So it's the perfect game theory that Bitcoin was designed on at play. And the conversations that are happening around the room go as follows. If your investment manager had been telling you for 5 years that Bitcoin's not an asset, that Bitcoin should not be in your portfolio, and now you're seeing news that the United States is going to be putting it in its portfolio, and that the state of Pennsylvania has just filed a bill to put it in its portfolio, I think you have a pretty serious conversation with that investment manager and ask him, if it's good enough for those governments, how can you tell me it's not good enough for me? And why are you leaving me out of this generational wealth building opportunity? You're fired. So I think, to the point that they're trying to make, execute or else, I think registered investment advisors and treasury managers around the world are basically going to be either taking a hard look at Bitcoin today or taking a hard look at the jobs market. That's my view.
100%. I think that's a really good take. Opti, 2 minutes. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of what Mauricio is saying is that now, the last couple of years, it's become very obvious, well, really since Larry Fink announced the ETF, that it was career suicide to embrace Bitcoin, to even shill Bitcoin to their clients. And now, like Mauricio just said, it's the opposite. If you're not shilling Bitcoin, if you're not talking about Bitcoin, then like that article is saying, your customers are going to leave and go somewhere else. Like, Bitcoin is the best performing asset the last 15 years. And now we're seeing that it's not just a fringe internet phenomenon. The highest, wealthiest, largest net worth people in the world are trying to get exposure to Bitcoin. And so this is only going to increase. Obviously, Saylor's been out there beating the drum on the corporate level. And now we're seeing that high net worth individuals are basically going to their institutional managers and like, yo, bro, like, I want some of this Bitcoin exposure. Like, why am I not getting the gains that all of these internet autists are getting out there? Like, Bitcoin is a legitimate asset now. Bitcoin has entered the mainstream conversation. And like Mauricio mentioned, we have nation states adding it, or at least talking about adding it to their reserves. We have states adding it to their reserves. We have companies all around the world adding it to their reserves, and they're outperforming everything else in the S&P 500. So it's becoming very clear that you need to have a Bitcoin strategy to continue to lead and continue to be an innovator and be ahead of the market. markets. And so I think this is only going to increase. But I really love what Mauricio said, where it's like right now it still has kind of that like flair. It's still very novel to talk about Bitcoin, but it is going to become just like a no-brainer to add Bitcoin to your corporate strategy. And I think this is what we're seeing, and we're going to see this play out. And you know, who knows how long this is going to take? Maybe it's a watershed moment in 2025. It's just going to be like every single company is going to have a Bitcoin strategy. It could take longer, but you're seeing that right now. That is the conversation. It's like, you know, that people on the back end are like, yo, we have to take Bitcoin very seriously. We saw the Microsoft vote, you know, shareholders doing the vote of adding Bitcoin to their balance sheet. So you know that every other company is probably having a very similar conversation. And we've been saying it all year, Nico, that once this year ends, we're going to see some very big names starting to talk about, or rather have exposure to ETFs. And like it's playing out in real time. You know, Goldman Sachs is talking about it. We know JP Morgan's been kind of embracing it more. All of the biggest companies in the world have to have a Bitcoin strategy, and now you're seeing it play out in real time. So hey, for everyone out there that's been stacking, numbers going to go up incredibly, and it's just very important that you continue to secure your Bitcoin, because you know, Bitcoin ETF, as much as we love the number go up, it's not real Bitcoin until it's in your cold storage.
Absolutely. Guys, stay tuned. We still have so much content for you guys. We're going to talk about, of course, the continuation, the battle for free speech. Chamath's $3 to $4 billion mistake selling Bitcoin early. It seems like Andrew Tate is trying to match Michael Saylor's buys. So Michael Saylor's buying billions. Andrew Tate apparently is buying millions in the process. And again, why is that important? Again, moving the Overton window. Bitcoin adoption is a cultural phenomenon, and whether you like it or not, Andrew Tate does have a huge following. And of course, the Pentagon fails its 7th audit in a row, which I find quite interesting, because I think if, you know, any one of us failed 7 audits, I think we'd be in prison by now. Anyways, guys, I do want to give a shout out to Simply Bitcoin's lead sponsor, Bitcoin Well. Bitcoin Well is a publicly traded company coming out of Canada that recently expanded to all 50 US states. What makes Bitcoin Well different than every other Bitcoin on-ramp is that it is automatic self-custody. What does that mean? That means when you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, as soon as the funds clear, they go straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet address. They also just announced their OTC desk for higher net worth individuals. So if you're interested in buying $50,000 worth of Bitcoin or more, you could personally email me at nico@bitcoinwell.com. I'll connect you with the Bitcoin Well representatives. It is a tailored white glove experience. So they'll take care of the process from A to Z. Self-custody, you could message someone, you could pick up the phone, you can call someone, and you can interact with your representative, your personal Bitcoin Well representative, and they'll walk you through buying large amounts of Bitcoin. Also, every time you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, you earn something called Bitcoin Well Point, and you could redeem those points towards the Bitcoin Well Bitcoin Wishing Well contest for an opportunity to win up to 1 million sats every time you toss a coin into the Wishing Well. So we're going to do that for you guys right now. Get your Lightning wallets ready. First person to scan the QR code has won 500 sats. Guys, we'll be right back. Let's hit the numbers. Let's do this. I want to tell you guys about our sponsor, Stampseed. Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Are your seed words really secure? Stampseed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you'll need to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates instead of writing them down on paper. Don't do that. Paper sucks. You want to literally stamp your seed into this plate of titanium. Your words are actually stamped into the metal plate with this hammer. So once your words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and your pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamp seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They are also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and most importantly, because this is generational wealth, time-proof. All things that paper is not. allowing you to hodl your Bitcoin for the long haul. I mean, here is the plate that they crushed. They put in water, they put a blowtorch to it, and as you can see, the words have survived. Stamp your seed on StampSeed. And you can use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on their store. Head over to stampseed.com today. All right, everybody. Shout out to the 1,406 of you guys watching live between YouTube and X. And shout out to the 70 of you guys watching live on Rumble. If you guys are enjoying the show so far, make sure to smash the like button. Scan the QR code on your screen if you want to maintain the relationship with your grandchildren, because eventually you're going to want to pass on your generational wealth. And generational wealth does not survive on paper. Stamp your seed on titanium. Stamp seed. Promo code SIMPLY. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is 91,410. Block height 870,896. Sats per dollar 1,094. Market cap 1.81 trillion. Bitcoin price in gold 35 ounces. Bitcoin versus gold market cap 9.97%. Percentage issued 94.2%. Decline from all-time high negative 2.2%. Realized monetary inflation 1.21%. In the grand scheme of things, we're just getting started. Also, continuing to take fiat currencies to absolute school. The targeted rate for fiat is like 2%. Bitcoin's already lower than that. And of course, the halving coming up in 4 years, or roughly 4 years from now, is just going to continue to take that lower. Anyways, let's talk about free speech. It is core to the Bitcoin movement. One of the things that you have to understand with Bitcoin is, and it's very kind of similar to how the First Amendment works in the United States. Mauricio and I, we were originally from Venezuela, kind of see this, what happens when you kind of censor political opponents and all that stuff. So I'm a huge fan of the First Amendment. I'm a huge fan of free speech. In fact, if you're a Bitcoiner, you have to be okay with even your worst enemy using Bitcoin. You can't censor them. Right now, is it perfect? No. Is it a little bit messy? Absolutely. But what is the alternative? The alternative, in my opinion, always leads to tyranny. Now, this is one of the arguments that Ross Stevens used in this research paper for NYDIG that he used. He says that Bitcoin is protected under the First Amendment. In the paper, we've read it. We've read some parts of it for you guys in the past. He argues that through extensive legal precedent, that Bitcoin is speech and therefore protected by the First Amendment. Any regulations attempting to curtail Bitcoin, therefore, have clear constitutional implications. Now, why am I bringing this up? Well, something happened over the weekend that was a little bit troubling to me specifically. Now, what am I talking about? So one of the biggest creators right now on X is Alex Jones. Now, Alex Jones is a very divisive figure to a lot of people. However, shutting down his platform he's built over the years is completely un-American. I think it's very dangerous. If you don't like what he has to say, don't listen to him. And another thing that I'll point out is that legacy media has said equally divisive things, but with absolutely no consequences. So you can't have two standards. You can't have a standard of, okay, Alex, and I'm not, agreeing or, saying that what he said was right or anything, or whatever. What I'm saying, what is the Voltaire quote? It's like, I might not agree with what you have to say, but I'll do whatever it takes to protect your right to say it. I think that's incredibly important. So the problem is that with this case that's happening, they're not interested in, getting, let me read some of the article. They're not really interested in getting the judgment for the families of Sandy Hook. What I believe they're interested in doing is shutting his platform down, shutting his ability to speak in the first place. And that is a very, very dangerous precedent. So let's check this out. At the bankruptcy hearing Thursday, the trustee overseeing the bankruptcy option, so they're selling, InfoWars, did not have the highest bid. The Sandy Hook families agreed to forego some of their defamation award to pay off Jones' other creditors, made the Onion's bid the best deal overall, according to the Associated Press. Judge Christopher Lopez said that he had concerns about how the bidding process played out. He ordered a hearing for next week to review how the auction was conducted. Quote, we're all going to an evidentiary hearing. I'm going to figure out exactly what happened. No one should feel comfortable with the result of the auction. So here's the thing. The whole point of bankruptcy is not to shut down speech. The whole point of bankruptcy is to make your creditors whole, or to at least give as much money possible to your creditors. But it seems like the auction wasn't supposed to do that. The auction was tailored to shut down the operation, or put the operation in the hands of a media outlet that perhaps isn't exactly very friendly to Jones. And if you still don't believe me, if you still think, Nico, you're crazy, you're reading too much into it, don't take my word for it. Take the lawyer's words for it.
With your verdict, you not only take Alex Jones' platform that he talks about away, I ask that you make certain he can't rebuild the platform. That's what matters. Take him out of this discourse, of this misinformation, of this peddling of lies, and make sure he can't do it again. That is punishment. That is deterrence.
And the question is going to be, where is Alex Jones when that happens? Is he in the studio? Getting ready to pounce? Or will you stop him?
And that is why I've been saying that what this is heading towards is there's going to be a large set of plaintiffs who are going to be dividing up the corpse of InfoWars in the bankruptcy estate. And over the course of that process, that could get very, very dangerous for Mr. Jones.
But we will be at it as long as it takes. And if you're out there right now and you're one of Alex Jones's audience members and you're considering giving him money, I just want you to know that based on the jury's verdict today, it's not a very good bet.
I hope that we never see someone like him again. I hope that with your verdict, he can go away.
But the money's not even really the question for me. The question is, will this suit be successful at stopping him from being on the national stage?
That's not what bankruptcy is about. That's not what bankruptcy is about. Bankruptcy is to make the creditors whole, or to at least attempt to do that, right? So we're going down a very slippery slope where, again, you're seeing lawfare being used, not necessarily for justice, but to shut down speech. And I mean, what did we just live through the last 3.5 years or so? I mean, what was this recent election about, right? I mean, and we were kind of forced to talk about it as Bitcoin media as soon as they started going after Bitcoin privacy developers for writing open source software. So if we don't hold the line on free speech, I'm telling you, if they're not okay with you transacting freely, what makes you think they're going to be if they're not okay with you speaking freely, what makes you think they're not okay with you transacting freely? So this is very important. And again, there's a double standards here. Here's Rachel Maddow. Let's hear what she had to say.
Work well enough that the virus stops with every vaccinated person. A vaccinated person gets exposed to the virus does not infect them. The virus cannot then use that person to go anywhere else. It cannot use a vaccinated person as a host to go get more people.
So I'm not saying one is right and one is the other, but there's a clear double standard there. If legacy media says things, they're not held accountable for things, even though that it could potentially hurt, it could potentially lead to damage. If Alex Jones says something, no, we have to use the bankruptcy as a justification to shut down his speech in totality. No, that doesn't make sense. It's a very, very dangerous precedent. As Bitcoiners, we've always been talking about free speech. We've always defended free speech. Mauricio, you and I come from a country where, if you say certain things, you potentially, let's just say,
you vanish.
Yeah. So, this is something that I remember I saw this and we never talked about it. Again, Alex Jones is very divisive, but as soon as I saw this, I'm like, this is crazy. This is lawfare, to the point that now Elon Musk has involved himself. He's just recently sent his lawyers to the bankruptcy case that Alex Jones is doing. So, I mean, this is crazy. And this is one of the reasons I believe that the whole Trump election happened the way it did, right? This is nuts. This is very un-American. Free speech is incredibly important to our movement, to the Bitcoin movement. And again, is it perfect? No. Is it messy? Yes. But what is the opposite? The opposite is always tyranny, because it's a bureaucratic elite that gets to decide what speech is okay, what speech is not okay, what is misinformation, and what is not misinformation. And the founding fathers in the United States had the wisdom to understand that there really kind of isn't another option, because if you give the government the ability to get to decide what is truth or not, they're going to use that as a political moat to protect themselves, right? Which has always happened. Like, look at history. Anyways, Mauricio, I'm going to pass it on to you. I know, like I said, I can't emphasize this enough, guys. Alex Jones is a divisive figure, but it's not about Alex Jones. It's about the attack on free speech. Mauricio, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess my thought is to perhaps frame this in not the context of Alex Jones, because like you said, it's easy to get carried away with all the things he said, and I'll let other ones judge what he said. But, you know, I don't want to sit here and say Alex is right and everyone else is wrong. I'm going to share my perspective of what's happened to me, or what I've lived through, and particularly in Venezuela, and then other things that I'm more of a spectator of, which is what's happening in Europe, which is pretty Darwinian, if you pretty horrible if you ask me. But what happened in Venezuela is when Chavez came in, one of the first things he did was he basically took over. I think the number is somewhere in 1,500 or 1,700 radio stations in the country. So the first thing he did is basically controls the narrative, or try to control the narrative. And that's a very, if you sort of read through the sort of dictatorial playbook or the tyrannical playbook, one of the first things they're always going to go after is the media. And because the reason is because the media tells people how to think and how to feel about certain things. They tell them they're supposed to tell you if an action by another country is a good thing or a bad thing, or they're always going and telling you that your politicians are always working so hard and caring about you. So the media is biased. I don't really think there's such thing as fully unbiased media. I think there is somewhere of a bias no matter where you go. The important thing is to keep a healthy balance between the different views, because what the government loves to do is to, whatever view is uncomfortable to them, they just go and shut it up. And that's exactly what happened in Venezuela. In Venezuela, at first, Chavez took the licenses from 1,500 radio stations. Then, as the opposing TV networks' licenses were coming up for renewals, he famously did not renew RCTV's license, which was the main opposition voice in the Venezuelan, news waves. And then slowly he started effectively punishing or going after anchors at the other news places that were against him. So in effect, if you turn on Venezuelan TV today, it's all regime propaganda. Like from dusk till dawn, no matter how far deep on the grid you go, it's all propaganda. So of course, no one says anything. There's no coverage of the opposition. It becomes a one-party state, a one-party media. And if you're either on their side or you're better off gone. So there is no winning when one group, whether it's right or left or whoever, controls the media, because the debate ends effectively. The right to debate, or the normalization of a debate, ends. Whatever the government says is Bible. What the government doesn't like is the devil. And you just go and chase it, and it becomes very easy for them. If you look at what's happening in the UK, there's been some outrage recently because people are getting thrown in jail over tweets and posts. And, I think the solution here is to let everyone tweet and say what they want, because when you try to politicize freedom of speech, you're inevitably going to come to a point where someone is going to have to be holding the moral compass. Someone's going to have to be saying, the person is saying, this is what's right and this is what doesn't stand. And that's always, by definition, subjective. So I think the founding fathers had a very elegant way of saying, everyone is allowed to say whatever they want. We're going to debate these ideas. And the way we all get smarter is by allowing these ideas to coexist and to ensure we can strawman and steelman the ones that make sense. There is no growth or no evolution of any living organism, in this case, a society, if there's no way of basically introduce new ideas that can improve on the ones that already exist. It's a script. It becomes a script, not organic debate. So that's what I would say. I would say it's very dangerous to try to put a moral compass on the conversation of your country. And I think that we all benefit from having these ideas out there, whether they're outrageous or not, but at least it allows people an opportunity to form their own opinions and just look at what the other side is thinking and say, okay, well, I still think this is the better way because I've heard now both sides. So I always think it's important to have a diversity of views in order for people to become smarter over time.
100%. And something that makes America very special, right, Mauricio, is that you come here and your speech is supposedly protected, right? And this differentiates the United States from a lot of other countries. And, it's like, even if you vehemently disagree with that person, the debate should be had and let the free market of ideas get to decide what idea is good and what idea is not good, right? But using lawfare and using, all this stuff to, shut up your opponent, basically to silence your opponent, is something that Mauricio just described. It's something that I've witnessed myself. And it's something that is very un-American. You don't do it. Even if the person that like I said, Alex Jones is extremely, extremely divisive. Mauricio?
I'm going to give you a quick example because this just came to me as we were talking about this. This is a perfect example. Venezuela just had its election. You know this, Nico, July 31st. The regime, once again, stole the election in front of everybody, like openly, no vote counts. We won. Trust me, bro. Like it was actual grand theft. And there was an outroar or outrage in social media. And everyone in social media was posting like, how can this be happening? Support Venezuelan people. Maduro's a criminal. And I was going through my Instagram those days because I wanted to see what my friends were posting locally, the videos they were posting. Nico, not a single one of my local friends posted a video challenging the government or saying anything bad about them. Not a single one of my friends that live in the country. Every one of us that was abroad, nonstop posting to raise awareness. When I asked my friend, and I asked him, I went point blank and I said, listen, if we the ones that have the means and the education to take a stance, if we're not taking a stance, how do we expect anyone else to take a stance? Why are you not saying anything? He's like, Mauricio, Graciela just put a note about, this is how they explained it. Graciela, who was another friend, had Maria Corina come and her staff members ate lunch at her restaurant. They shut down the restaurant for allowing their staffers to have lunch at the restaurant. And so people are like, I'm petrified of what they're going to do if I post. And so all my friends just silently into a corner, even though they have been squashed. The regime's boot is on their neck and they're still not posting. So it gets really dark really fast if we start muzzling people by force.
Exactly. Even if you don't like what they have to say, right? Which
100%.
is very similar to how Bitcoin works. You're going to have to be okay with your worst enemy benefiting from Bitcoin and also using Bitcoin to transact freely, right? So, and even if that means Alex Jones, right? So, Opti, what's your take on this? 1 minute.
Yeah. So obviously, we whenever we talk about free speech, we always get kind of very similar questions in the chat. Like, I thought this was a Bitcoin show. Why are they talking about free speech? And it's very simple, guys. Like Nico says it all the time. We talk about this constantly on the show. Like, if you can't speak freely, what makes you think the powers that be are going to let you transact freely? And going even further, Bitcoin is speech. It is codes. It is ones and zeros. And so you've seen, especially, in the last month or whatever, since this election in the US, you've seen that the legacy media, the corporate press is on its last breath. And I think this is one of those attacks that we've been seeing from the corporate press to essentially silence Alex Jones. Obviously, like that clip of the lawyers talking is, in my opinion, absolutely insane. Like, that's wild that they're actually saying the quiet part out loud. But you can see right now that the powers that be for, the longest time have had the monopoly on information, or rather the control of the narrative. And now that they're losing that control, when they're backed into a corner, that's when they're most vicious. And you're seeing this play out, not very very many people, especially the younger generations, are going to the corporate press because I think we all kind of, at least as the youth, understand that the corporate press is the propaganda machine, and these institutions are losing they're losing their legitimacy here, and people are starting to move away to alternative platforms, and this is why they're fighting back, and this is why they're doing their best to try to stop alternative media, and this is why you're seeing the lawfare play out. There's multiple examples that we covered this year in regards to lawfare, in regards to independent content creators, and I mean, if the last 4 years hasn't been a wake-up call for a lot of people that the stuff coming out from the television isn't actually the truth and it's just pure propaganda, then, I hate to be the guy, but you may be a lost cause here, and, we're doing our best to educate you that this is a free speech issue and Bitcoin is a free speech issue, and of course, in America, we have the First Amendment. It's just absolutely crazy that the Leviathan, the powers that be, are fighting so hard to control the narrative. But in that moment, it just goes to show that you have the power here by communicating peer-to-peer, by, like Mauricio was saying, by continuing to meme and tweet and talk about these topics. This is how more people wake up. And I think we're seeing this play out in real time. And I think the future, there's going to be, yellow journalism might increase, but I think that's going to further society, and we're going to have a lot more freedom moving forward. Things might get a little dark before it gets better, but hey, I think this is what is needed for society to move forward, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, 100%. I don't think it's a coincidence that X is the most popular news platform in the world on multiple app stores, different countries. I don't think that's a coincidence, right? I think people naturally gravitate towards the truth, and I think that's what you're seeing on a worldwide, and just kind of using lawfare and using bankruptcy to silence. And that's not the whole point. That's not the point of the case. The point of the case is to make the creditors whole, not to silence an opponent, and for the lawyers to feel like emboldened to be basically say, like, I hope that the end result of this is just for him not to be able to speak at all. Like, that's insane. It's completely un-American. It leads to tyranny. You have to be okay with even your worst enemies, using Bitcoin. You have to be okay with your worst enemies, speaking freely, and let the free market of ideas, see what idea is best. Anyways, guys, let's get to news. We're going to talk about Michael Saylor continuing to double down. He's making a record Bitcoin purchase. Of course, Chamath admits that he made a $4 billion mistake selling his Bitcoin, and the audit. The Pentagon fails its 7th audit in a row. And of course, guys, stay tuned for the culture. And we're going to talk to Mauricio about Ledn. All right, everybody, let's check it out. Here we go.
Special shout out to our sponsor, Compass Mining. They make Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone, from beginners to experienced investors. Their turnkey miners gets you online and hashing within 48 hours, making it easier than ever to start your mining journey. Plus, with their active marketplace, you can resell your miner at any time, adding flexibility and value to your investment. Visit their website to access a wealth of resources, learning everything you need to know about Bitcoin mining. Take your first step into the world of Bitcoin mining with confidence. Discover more at compassmining.io. Again, compassmining.io, and see how Compass Mining can power your success. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Foundation. It's self-custody done right. They built a premium grade hardware wallet called Passport right here in the US, and it integrates seamlessly with their free app called Envoy. Passport is fully open source and verifiable. It's the most intuitive Bitcoin wallet designed with a UX reminiscent of a classic feature phone, so you'll know how to navigate it and use it the moment you pick it up. It's also air-gapped, meaning Bitcoin stays offline, never touching an internet connection. It's Bitcoin only, open source verifiable, air-gap security model, gorgeous design craft, premium grade materials. Get your Bitcoin off exchanges and into your own hands in just a few minutes with Passport at foundation.xyz/simply. Get peace of mind for your piece of Bitcoin.
All right, everybody, you won't be able to get Opti, but if you use promo code SIMPLY, you get a discount to the Passport by Foundation devices. Not your keys, not your cheese. Guys, self-custody is the revolution. Again, use promo code SIMPLY to get a discount. You want to take self-custody of your Bitcoin. You're going to need a hardware wallet to do that. We recommend our sponsor. Again, it does not come with Opti. All right, everybody. So let's talk about today's article. Michael Saylor continuing to buy all that Bitcoin up, or at least attempting to. This is a Bloomberg article. MicroStrategy taps stock market to fund record Bitcoin buy. It continues to say MicroStrategy bought a record $4.6 billion in Bitcoin, making good on plans announced last month to tap capital markets to accelerate purchases of the cryptocurrency. The enterprise software maker, whose corporate strategy includes buying the digital asset, acquired about 51,780 Bitcoin between November 11th and November 17th. Could that have been the pump, according to the SEC Commission filing on Monday? That follows purchases of over 27,000 Bitcoin between October 31st and November 10th, and two large acquisitions in September. MicroStrategy co-founder and chairman Michael Saylor decided to invest in Bitcoin in 2020 as a hedge against inflation. The firm initially used cash to make the purchases and has shifted to using the proceeds from the issuance and sale of stock, as well as convertible debt sales, to leverage its buying power. On October 30th, the firm announced that it hired banks to help it raise $42 billion through the sale of new shares and fixed income to buy more Bitcoin. MicroStrategy tapped its so-called at-the-market program to sell 13.6 million shares into the market over the week ending November 17th, the filing showed. The sales are part of a record $21 billion program that enables the company's bankers to create shares to sell into the market. The proceeds pooled over the past week would mark the fourth largest at-the-market deal by itself, a signal of the rampant demand for shares, data compiled by Bloomberg show. The company is now the largest institutional holder of Bitcoin, with 331,200 Bitcoin purchased at an aggregated price of approximately $16.5 billion, well below the current value. And you know what's really crazy about this is that usually when a company sells shares to the stock market, the price goes down. The price just keeps going up, and then they just keep issuing debt, or they just keep selling shares, and then they use the proceeds of that to buy more Bitcoin, making the price go up even more, and they just keep rinsing, repeating this. This is, I mean, Mauricio, what is this? This is like a cheat code to a video game. This is like the cheat code to the video game of fiat. Bitcoin is the cheat code.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting here is Michael has clearly found a very clever way of using the traditional finance infrastructure to effectively mint new shares, get cash with those shares, and go buy Bitcoin with it. And he has been really the first leverage play on Bitcoin. He has, he has a first mover advantage, and he has, first mover advantage of being the first corporate treasury. Now he's become an operating company with a massive corporate treasury that's basically all in on Bitcoin, and it's leveraging that treasury to buy more Bitcoin. And I think what he's doing, or the attractiveness or the allure of this, is that Michael is taking advantage of a very hot bond market with relatively low yields. So on the fixed income side, his value prop is quite strong, because you have a bond that's giving you market yield, it's backed by Bitcoin, and on top of that gives you a call option to MicroStrategy shares, which you can then go out and sell. So it juices up your yield. So on the fixed income side, it's all very good and dandy, because right now, again, Michael is really the only or the best offering that does this. But to the point I was trying to make earlier, I think you're seeing a sort of people trying to basically all come in through this door of acquiring Bitcoin with their balance sheet while it's still new and exciting. What I think could happen is that as more leveraged ETFs start coming into the market, by this I mean, I expect fairly soon, if not in the next few months or even within the next year, to start seeing, leveraged Bitcoin spot ETF. So 2x ETF, 3x Bitcoin, 4x Bitcoin, short Bitcoin. Right now, I'm looking at a 3x S&P leverage index. These things already exist. And I think that once you start putting more, because that's really what an ETF does. An ETF, when you send it cash, it literally turns around and buys the position that it's supposed to be buying. So if the position right now with MicroStrategy is a 3x leverage on Bitcoin, you could theoretically get a very similar performance with a 3x leverage ETF. Sans the operating company, which frankly I don't think anybody really understands what they do. So I actually think that there's a big rush right now, and you're going to see this play out because of the game theory. But I fully expect that 2 years from now or a year from now, when it's not just MicroStrategy, but basically everyone under the sun catching up to this and trying to do this, it will no longer be exciting. It will no longer be a differentiator, and you'll probably be better served by going to a clean 3x ETF. So I think people are trying to strike while the iron is hot, and that's why I think we saw this very bold announcement from them just recently.
Interesting. So it's not like people aren't actually buying the stock. We like, it's essentially functioning as a product, as something that doesn't quite exist yet. And people are using the MicroStrategy stock to get that type of exposure because an alternative product does not exist.
That's my general view. I think it's a way for you to play leverage Bitcoin in the stock market because there's a lot of people that can't. I think there's a lot of companies that have a mandate or funds that have a mandate that they can't own these ETFs yet. And MicroStrategy just happens to tick the box because it has an operating company under it. But I think that this is all going to play out and resolve itself because I love Michael. I love what he's done for Bitcoin. I'm a huge fan of his content and everything he does. I do not believe in infinite money glitches. I don't believe.
Okay. Fair enough. So it's an appearance of it, but it's a temporary thing just because he was kind of first to market. People are using his stock as kind of like a leverage Bitcoin play. They're not actually buying his stock for the core function of the company. He's fulfilling a need in the stock market, and no other kind of product exists to give that type of leverage exposure. Would it be correct to say that?
That would be my view. I would argue that 90%, barely, that's a bit harsh, but 85% of the people that own MicroStrategy don't know what the underlying company does.
Gotcha. And also, it seems like we have Gary Gensler in the chat. What's going on here? You will be gone in January, Gary. Anyways, I do want to get to this, Opti. I know we're running a little bit long, and I do want to give Mauricio 20 minutes on Ledn. But I want to get his opinion on this. So here is the All In podcast, very famous. I think it's with Nick Sachs, the Jason guy, and then Chamath. And he said something quite interesting in one of the recent episodes. Let's check it out.
More exciting for you personally.
Honestly, you know what I think about? I actually think about all the Bitcoin I sold.
What is going on here?
It's good, Nico. It's good.
I had
okay, perfect.
More exciting for you personally.
Honestly, you know what I think about? I actually think about all the Bitcoin I sold.
Oof. Yeah,
I had Bitcoin. I had a bunch of Bitcoin in my funds when I managed outside capital. That's a $3 or $4 billion mistake in growing now because my partners at the time capitulated and I wanted to be a good team member and we distributed and it was profitable, but obviously I shouldn't have sold it. Would have made them a lot more money. And then I think about I bought some land.
I remember
Tahoe.
that, yeah.
It was in the Wall Street Journal. I'm sure you can find it, but
yeah,
how much is that worth now? Probably a couple $100 million, maybe more.
Rough trade. But you do have Bitcoin holdings.
Chamath,
So
can I ask you a question? Why do you say sold Bitcoin as opposed to converted Bitcoin into dollars? Like when you think about Bitcoin, just as a participant, do you think about Bitcoin as a dollar denominated asset that you go and buy Bitcoin and then you're eventually going to sell it, turn it back into dollars and use the dollars? Or are you what do you think about the purest kind of idea that Bitcoin should be the de facto currency and store of value in the future and the dollar doesn't matter? And we shouldn't necessarily be talking about the value of Bitcoin in dollar denominated terms as something I'm going to eventually turn it back into.
It hasn't happened yet. And so until it happens, I think you have to view it as like a very good gold proxy. But it's a largely dollar-denominated asset.
Now, why do you see it going the other way? So a lot of folks thought that as a safe haven, it should do well when there's a negative economic outlook, but it has traded the last couple of years kind of the opposite.
Totally correlated. No, it's a totally correlated asset. I mean,
yeah,
there will be a point, and it's probably in our lifetime, where it is an independent asset and a non-speculative store of value. There will be that day, but that day is not now. And I think it's very important to see the conditions on the field as they are versus what you wish it to be. And the reason is that it allows you to risk manage more appropriately. Because if you don't see it, then when something happens to the dollar complex, good or bad, or when something happens to rates, good or bad, or when something stimulative happens, good or bad, you're not going to react properly if you're in the business of managing it as a risk asset. So if you're in the set it and forget it bucket, and there are some people, I think it's great. None of these conversations matter. But like most people, you're probably going to be motivated to do something. And I think if you're motivated to do something, or you have FOMO that stimulates you to do something, whatever the psychology is that leads you to action, it's probably important to just view things as they really are versus how you wish them to be. And so I think the purists may eventually be right. I think they will be right at some point in my lifetime, but they're not right now. And that's why these things are correlated. And you should act appropriately. The other thing I'll say just broadly about the market is I think that there's a tremendous amount of optimism about the economy. I think that's why you see risk spreads get crushed.
Definitely. Yeah.
And I think that as long as we see the kind of prognostications that the Trump administration is putting out, I think people are going to be mostly bullish. I think the way that this trade turns around.
All right, I'm going to stop it right there. Opti, I'm going to start with you because I didn't get your opinion on the last subject. What are your thoughts on Chamath and then Mauricio, and then we're going to hit the culture?
Well, it really kind of just reminds me of what Greg Foss has been saying for so long. Like, don't be too, don't be too smart by a half or whatever. It's like he obviously has good insights and he knows how the markets is working, but it just goes back to the same idea, like never sell your Bitcoin, especially if you are super bullish on your Bitcoin. You shouldn't be selling huge amounts of your stacks because everyone knows it's a bad trade. Even if you're buying real estate, real estate as investment has been pretty strong for the last whatever amount of, decades. But if you're just going into dollars, like, it's always going to be a bad trade. And, obviously we don't have 4 billions in Bitcoin right now, but like still everyone feels the same pain when you sell your Bitcoin for something and you look back at, the cost of capital in regards to Bitcoin. You're always like, man, I shouldn't have done that. Like I should do whatever I can to hold Bitcoin for as long as I can. And trading Bitcoin is never a good solution, especially if you're new to Bitcoin. Like the best bet is just buy Bitcoin, accumulate Bitcoin, take it into cold storage. Obviously, Chamath has, I would argue, a good grasp of what's going on in the macroeconomic landscape, but even he will acknowledge, he's like, man, that was a bad trade. I shouldn't have done that. And so, for everyone out there, it's just like, don't sell your Bitcoin, just hold your Bitcoin, make sure you have a huge hodl stack. And then if you want to, sell a little Bitcoin to live your life, like I'm not against that, but obviously like, don't be buying stuff if you think Bitcoin's going to be the fastest horse in the race. Like it's just never sell your Bitcoin. I mean, even Trump said it at the conference. Never sell your Bitcoin. Never sell your Bitcoin. You guys say? Never sell your Bitcoin.
Have fun with your Bitcoins. Anyways, Mauricio, what's your take on this? I mean, 3 to 4 billion. I mean, that's nothing amongst friends, right?
Chamath, if you're listening, Bitcoin back loans exist, brother. You could have taken a Bitcoin back loan. You could have bought your land. You could have kept the Bitcoin. You would have been celebrating both right now. And I think selling your Bitcoin and realizing selling your Bitcoin is a bad idea. It's just part of everyone's journey. Nico, Opti, we've all sold Bitcoin. We built Ledn because I got tired of selling Bitcoin. And I had no other choice. And I knew how bad of a decision it was. Yet, I was going into these banks and financial institutions. They were laughing me out of the room, telling me Bitcoin wasn't an asset. So because we couldn't find a way to solve our own problem, we went out and built it. So again, and I'll say this, as I've always said it, lending or borrowing against your Bitcoin, nothing that you have to give custody of your Bitcoin is without risk, but it is an amazing tool. And I see a future in which borrowing against your Bitcoin is going to be faster, cheaper, and way more widely available than borrowing against US real estate. And guess what? It's going to be available to the world at large because it's not just 300 million people that live in a particular part of the world. It'll be available to anyone that's able to buy the world's best collateral asset. And that's everyone, by the way, from Chamath to Miguel in Honduras. So I look forward to that future. And Chamath, hopefully for next time, you'll be able to take a Bitcoin back loan.
Yeah, go check out Ledn, Chamath. What's going on over there? No, but this is a perfect segue to the culture. Guys, if you use the tools at hand, there's great ways to kind of leverage your Bitcoin using it as collateral to get some cash. And you can use that cash to live. You can use that cash. I don't recommend this, nor does Simply Bitcoin. You can use that cash to speculate a little bit. You can use that cash to, pay off some bills, potentially start a business. And when you get that cash, there's no tax implications because it is a loan. So we're going to talk about Ledn and all the functionality that it gives you. I recently rolled over one of my Bitcoin loans from another company to, I don't even know if that's the correct terms, but I ended a Bitcoin loan from another company and I initiated the loan on the Ledn platform. I've been a huge fan so far. And there's a couple of features that surprised me that, I don't think a lot of people know about. So I'm very excited to talk about my personal experience. And then we got Mauricio on the show, and shout out to the 2,000 of you guys watching live. We just broke that number on YouTube and X, and shout out to the Rumble crowd as well. So stay tuned for the culture. But before we jump into it, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors. So first up, I want to give a shout out to HIVE Digital Technologies. As the first ever public miner, HIVE has been battle tested through every possible market. And as the first with an AI strategy, HIVE continues to redefine the future of sustainable computing. Gotta also casually drop this in here. HIVE consistently tops the industry in Bitcoin mined per exahash. They're lean and mean, they're green and clean, and they're changing the game. Learn more by following them at HIVE Digital Tech or at hivedigital.com. Check out their NASDAQ ticker, HIVE. Also, check out BitBlockBoom, which Simply Bitcoin will be doing the production for. The whole Simply Bitcoin crew will be there. Opti, Nico, Rustin, Jacob, Dante. You definitely don't want to miss a true Bitcoin conference. And when I mean a true Bitcoin conference, it's Bitcoin only. Mauricio was there last year. We got to spend some time together. We were at the barbecue. It's going to be freaking awesome. And it's 4 days this year. It's April 3rd, April 4th, April 5th, April 6th, and it's going to be in Dallas, Texas. I hope to see you guys all there. If you guys want to meet us in the flesh, or you guys just want to go to an amazing Bitcoin conference, I highly recommend BitBlockBoom. And if you use promo code BBB21, you get $100 off your ticket. See you guys at BitBlockBoom in Dallas, Texas. All right, everybody, let's hit the culture. All right, everybody. I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor, the Orange Pill app. Stack friends who stack sats. Guys, the Orange Pill app is the app for you if you don't know any Bitcoiners around you. Has a really clever geographical feature. So when you pull up the Orange Pill app, it will literally show you the Bitcoiners near you, and it will give you the ability to send them a message directly. So if you're traveling, you're on the go for a conference, and you don't know anything to do that day, pull up the Orange Pill app, send DMs to Bitcoiners directly. Also, check out the Bitcoin only events near you. Join the 13,629 Bitcoiners that are currently on the app. Stack friends who stack sats. All right, guys, I have to give you my personal experience, and Mauricio kind of lived through this with me because we were going back and forth with Telegram. So TLDR, essentially, I had a collateralized Bitcoin loan with another company, and they changed the terms, they changed the rates. I really didn't like it. And me and Mauricio I consider us friends, and obviously, the Venezuelans, right? So I have that cultural similarity, and we go way back. And I'm a vibes guy, I'm an energy guy. So I'm like, okay, you know what? Let me try this. So I paid off that previous loan, and I started a loan a little bit more because I wanted some extra cash for for Simply and for the business and all that stuff. And I started a Bitcoin-backed collateralized loan and Ledn. And one of the first things that surprised me, and this is very different compared to how a lot of these other companies operate, is that first off, it's a 1-year term, and there's no monthly payments. And that I always want to pay my credit cards or my bills on time. I don't like any of the penalizations. And of course, if you have Bitcoin and you're using it as collateral, you obviously want to stay on top of things, right? So I'm like, it's like getting to that 30-day mark, and I'm like, wait a second, and I was like messaging Mauricio on Telegram. I was like, so do I have to pay? And then I was like going through the Ledn website, and then the FAQ, and then it said it's like, no, you just pay back at the end of the loan. And one of the things that's even really even cooler is that if you don't pay it back, Mauricio, correct me if I'm wrong, it automatically rolls over, right?
It does, as long as your LTV is still healthy. So as long as your LTV is below 65%, and I think Max is one of the, he made a tweet recently, which I thought was really funny because somebody was mentioned the exact same point on Twitter, and Max's comment underneath was "roll, baby, roll," because we do have a lot of clients now. The average maturity of a Ledn loan is about 180 days. So that's where we see people effectively, repay on average. But there's a lot of our clients that have taken out these loans to make very long-term investments. So some people have used our loans to purchase homes. Some people have used our loans to finance their businesses. So we've had clients that have rolled loans for 4 years plus. And obviously you have to manage your collateral. They haven't sent Ledn an extra dime. Obviously all the interest and fees accrue over time. But as long as they manage their collateral, they could continue rolling the loan and effectively use it as a way to optimize their cash flow and their taxes.
Yeah, no, and it's such a, like the way that I describe it, it's a tool. It's definitely a tool that if you use responsibly, because there's something else that you guys have to understand, right? Is that the and you were talking about it earlier, the LTV. So yes. I think that stands for loan to value, right?
Correct. So that's the ratio between the collateral you place and the dollars we lend to you. And why that's really important is because we don't run credit checks. The only thing we have on the borrow or on the transaction is the collateral. So, and nobody has a crystal ball to say, Bitcoin's going to bounce back. You have this many hours before it reaches that price level. That doesn't really exist. So at Ledn, the most important thing for you to manage or maintain is that loan to value ratio. Our only hard rule when it comes to liquidations is don't let your loan get to 80% LTV. That is the point at which our system automatically liquidates a loan. There's no human intervention. It's all algorithmic, but we don't ask you to bring it back to 40 or 50 or 30. The only thing we say is don't let it get to 80. We have tools to help people do that. So we have this feature called auto top up, which Nico, I don't know if you have on your loan yet, but effectively you can leave a little bit of extra Bitcoin there so that the system is pre-authorized to top up your loan if and when the price moves overnight. We have a lot of clients that, go hiking, go traveling, they go into remote areas with no signal, and they want to have no fear of an overnight dip. So they can do two things. They can either proactively over collateralize a loan, or they could set up auto top up, which then basically sweeps the authorized amount into your loan. And the beautiful thing about this is that our clients get smarter with time. Every time we see a 30% plus drawdown, we have less and less of our book get affected, and higher percentages of our clients top up and manage their loan, which is exactly what we want to see. At the end of the day, the ability to liquidate a loan is a reality of our business because we need to maintain the financial integrity of the operation. But it's a point that we try to, we do our absolute best to make people understand that potential or that risk aspect of it, and they can manage accordingly. If you manage these loans right, you go through our reviews. Anyone that took out a loan over the last year or 2 years and didn't sell their Bitcoin is elated for having done so. And a lot of people will say, credit not getting liquidated for things like auto top up. So I think it's a tool, to your point, Nico, that if you use it responsibly can, lead to great outcomes.
And especially guys, like one of the things, like, especially if you live in the United States or like most of the Western democracies, and like unless you're like in Dubai or something like that, like, there is a taxable event when you sell your Bitcoin. And, a lot of the way that, for example, like people like Elon Musk, like these very, very wealthy people, a lot of the way that they don't pay taxes is because they don't take a salary. And what they do is that they get compensated like in stock or something like that. And then they go to a bank, and Mauricio was just describing how this is the exact reason why he started this business in the first place. And then they go to a bank and they essentially give that stock up as collateral to the bank. The bank's like, this is Tesla stock, of course. They charge an interest rate, and then they give a bunch of cash in return. And then you don't have to, that's a loan, right? This is totally legal. That's a loan, right? And that's a great way for you to utilize your Bitcoin without necessarily selling it. And if you sell it, it becomes a taxable event, right? So again, you have to do this responsibly. I go from the side of caution. So like, I'm like very small percentage of my total portfolio just because I know Bitcoin has volatility. And like, you never want to be put in a position as a Bitcoiner where you have less Bitcoin today than you did the day before, because then you're losing. The goal should always be have more Bitcoin today than the day before. If you have more Bitcoin today than the day before, you are by definition winning, right? So yeah, this is a very, very good tool if you use responsibly. Personally using it myself, huge fan. And honestly, I'm not going to name any names, but it's been a much better experience than the previous company that I was using. Number one, because of the rates, and number two, there's no monthly payments, right? So it just kind of, it compounds over time, the interest that you owe, but you could pay it off at any time. So, and you don't get penalized for it. Is that correct, Mauricio?
Correct. Yeah. And so that's brilliantly said. And I think a couple of other interesting nuggets to add is that you can repay the loan at any time. Nobody penalizes you for it. Our interest rate, you pay interest until the day you have the loan. So if you have it for 4 days, you pay 4 days. So you can repay it at any time, whether in full or in fractions. So you can make partial repayments on the loan as well. And the brilliant thing about it also is, in the same way that we ask you to send additional collateral if the price of Bitcoin goes down, you have the option to redeem excess collateral when the price of Bitcoin goes up. So what we see a lot of clients do in this market environment is they are scooping off that extra excess collateral that they have because the collateral value has just skyrocketed, and they're either keeping it or taking a new loan or taking it to full custody, whatever it is that they want to do. We've had a bunch of clients too, Nico, to your point, that have basically said, I'm going to take a loan until Bitcoin reaches 90K, because when it reaches 90K, I will be happy selling a fraction of it to repay it, and I'll have met my investment goal. So we're seeing some of that as well. But the whole point of it is that if Bitcoin continues to do what it does, which is go up in fiat terms, because the government keeps printing and debasing fiat over time, you are basically going short the weak currency by still remaining long the hard asset. And you were describing what you were describing earlier, which is the way wealthy people perpetuate their wealth, which is they take their assets, they go to the bank, they get an asset-backed loan, and then they disperse, and then they use that to buy more assets, and the assets get repriced, and they take it back to the bank. So in effect, what they're doing is they are long a hard asset, short the dollars they owe the bank. So it's a trade that works pretty well as long as government continues being irresponsible and printing out of their eyeballs, which is what they all do. And it's no surprise that if you go out to most wealthy people and you ask them what kind of financial instruments they use, they'll tell you asset-backed lending. To me, it was a huge surprise when I started going to financial entities 6 years ago, asking for a Bitcoin-backed loan, and everyone laughed us out of the room. Immediately, my business partner and I said to each other, like, this is the biggest opportunity in modern finance, is to build financial services for this thing before the banks wake up. And that's effectively what we've done. And we've built, in many ways, a financial service platform for Bitcoiners that got tired of getting left out of the banks.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. And not 100%. And not only that, guys, like I have found myself in that situation where it's like, you don't want to sell your Bitcoin, right? Because, you have your, whatever your portfolio tracker is, whatever it is that you use, and, you have your Bitcoin on there, and you're like, if I sell my Bitcoin for whatever it is, my Bitcoin number is going to go down. Like, I don't want to do that. Right. And it's like, how do I leverage this stack? And this is and this is something that perhaps a lot of people are not aware of, Mauricio, but this is very, very common, especially for, like you said, for higher net worth individuals. This is very, very common in the traditional, financial world, right? People give assets as collateral to like buy a house or buy a car, right? So why can't you do that with Bitcoin, which is the most superior asset on the face of the planet? Which, by the way, from your perspective, makes it a great business because you have the best superior asset on the face of the planet as collateral. Yeah.
The banks have gone from basically looking at us like we were lunatics to looking at our business and being like salivating. They're like, oh my God, this is incredible. I can't believe that I'm just learning about this. And to say it, banks went from laughing us out of the room to today they're our biggest funding partners, and I frankly believe they're going to continue getting more and more involved. That's a good thing for Bitcoin for a couple of reasons. if you go back 2-3 years, one of the biggest things that held Bitcoin back, because a lot of people don't want to sell their Bitcoin, but what happens is when everybody comes and tries to borrow at the same time, our cost of capital goes higher because there's not enough dollar liquidity that is willing to fund these loans because they don't quite understand the risk profile. They don't understand that Ledn hasn't lost a penny in billions of these dollars processed, for 6 years running. So now they're seeing this and they're saying, wait a second, you guys have a model that has no loan losses. You have excellent yields and your collateral is the most pristine thing in the world that I can sell in 24/7. I'm like, we want in. And so clearly they're going to continue waking up to this because it's a brilliant model, and they're going to come and they're going to lend us more capital, which in turn is going to help us lower the loan rates that we offer our clients, which will in turn make our loans more compelling because as the cost of capital comes down, you're more comfortable taking out loans to do bigger and better longer term things. So I see this as a really virtuous cycle that we're going into with capital markets sort of or finally being able to enter Bitcoin and power the financial services that we offer today.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I saw a question in the chat. Mauricio, how do people get started? They go to lend.io. So it's LEDN.io. They get started. Yes. What's the setup process like? Yeah, me and you were going back and forth while I was doing it. I was like excited. I was through the process. And what is the setup process like? Is it easy? Do you need some type of technical know-how? Walk us through it.
Yeah, so Ledn, we built Ledn to be as easy to interact with as possible. So you can get an account open in 2 minutes. We are a fully regulated entity, so you will have to do KYC. The KYC process, you'll need an ID and a proof of address document. Once you have those two things, it takes less than 5 minutes to upload the data. Usually you'll get an answer and be approved within hours if it does automatically. If it gets escalated to our team, it'll be within 24 hours. But you'll get set up and running in the happy path in about 10 minutes. From there, you can apply for a loan. Nico, you can attest to this, but the application, you just have to check if you want fiat or if you want stable coins, and then basically input your bank details and the amount of Bitcoin you want to use. But then once the loan goes through, it's approved in a matter of hours. Then you'll be assigned a collateral address for you to send the Bitcoin. And the loans are dispersed into your bank accounts or your stablecoin addresses, usually within 24 hours of the collateral being received. So loans start at $500. So that's important. And we did this because we have a lot of clients. Nico, you and I are from Venezuela. We know how badly people need this in the emerging markets. So some of our competitors took the view that they only wanted to cater to high net worth individuals. We service high net worth individuals too. You can apply for loans up to $2.5 million on the platform, but they start at $500. And that's important because if you're new to this structure or product, a lot of people want to know how long will it take for me how long will the funds take to arrive? How long will I need to be prepared to do a top up? Like, what's the experience of a margin call like? How do I repay this? What's this no monthly interest payment thing? So a lot of people take the $500 loan, they get a feel for how everything works, and then they come back and take, $100,000 or whatever they need. But for us, it was important to have small amounts. A, for people to be able to interact with the platform with like relatively low friction, and B, to be able to service, we do a lot of like $2,000 loans for someone in Colombia that wants to buy a laptop to finish school. We do a lot of that too. And those are frankly the deals that fulfill me a great deal from a personal level. But there's also the very wealthy Bitcoiner somewhere in the US that has $10 million worth of Bitcoin and goes to the bank asking for a mortgage because they had their second kid, and the bank says, no, you have no actual fiat income, therefore I cannot give you a loan. And they'll say, well, I have these $10 million here worth of Bitcoin. The bank says, great, that's not an asset. So they end up coming to Ledn, they borrow $5 million with the 10 collateral, buy their dream home, and go on with their lives.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, man, it's so crazy, and I've had such a positive experience. I wish I knew about it before, because I think I would have got a better deal, right? So guys, go check out lend.io. It's absolutely awesome. Mauricio is a great guy. Consider him a friend at this point. So go check out the product, lend.io. Like I said, Guys, if you guys enjoyed today's show, see, I was like, okay, Opti, you know, maybe we get punished in the algos a little bit, but seems we came roaring back on a Monday. So this is awesome. If you guys enjoyed today's show, make sure to smash the like button. Consider subscribing if you feel like we provided you value. Again, I'm your host, Nico. It's my legendary co-host, Optimus Fields, our guest from today, Mauricio from Ledn. And we'll see you guys tomorrow for a brand new episode of Simply Bitcoin Live.
Brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.